Thank you, Anna. Well, welcome everyone. My name is Sarah Crymans, and you'll meet my co-presenters here in just a moment. But we welcome everyone to this webinar, Making Your Home Healthier. And thank you to folks who have added items in the chat box about what they are concerned about. We've had a range of responses from radon and falls and air quality. So great. We're going to start with a poll so that we can learn why are you participating in today's webinar. And Anna is going to pull that poll up for us, and you will be able to respond to let us know if you're participating for personal use, professional use, or both personal and professional.
There it is.
Let me see. There we go. Thank you. Oh, nope, wrong question. Yep, no worries. Take that one down and we'll bring the right one up.
We were looking at these earlier. Okay, here we go.
Thank you, Anna. Nothing like putting you on the spot. Perfect.
Right.
Okay, go ahead and indicate why you're participating today. We'll give folks just a few more seconds here so everyone can respond. Okay, we're going to go with that. I'm going to, yep, thank you, Anna, sharing the results. So it looks like 58% of you are participating for both personal and professional use, and about 38% for personal use, just one person for professional only. Thank you. That's
interesting thing part is most of us as professionals live at a home too, so
so very true. So very true. Thank you for responding to the poll. You heard me call on Anna to help already. Anna Peterson is our webinar producer today. So if you have any questions or concerns related to technology, feel free to private chat her in the chat box, or if you want to snap a picture with your phone, so you can email her or give her a phone number. But the chat is the best way to connect with Anna, who can help with tech issues. So thank you for being with us today, Anna. And with me today are my colleagues, Lori Hendrickson and Patrick Hulman. Lori and Pat, why don't we have you just introduce yourselves real quickly? Lori first. Yeah.
Okay. I'm Lori Hendrickson. I'm an extension educator out of the Grand Rapids Regional Office. And I've spent a lot of time working with housing, particularly with renters, with our RentWise program. So these are issues that always come up with renters as well, and keeping your home healthy. So glad to be here today.
Great. Thanks, Lori. Pat?
Yeah, hi, I'm Pat Hillman, and I'm an Associate Extension Professor. I'm located at the U of M campus, and I work in building and energy systems. Specifically, I'm a building scientist, and trying to help people either build or remodel so they can have efficient, durable, and healthy homes. So indoor air quality is certainly a part of that, an area I've spent quite a bit of time in.
Great. Thank you, Lori and Pat. And Pat, especially, we're so pleased to have you here because you have such a wealth of knowledge on housing infrastructure and what makes it healthier. So thank you, Lori and Pat, for joining us today. We're going to do another chat. So I'm going to ask folks to find the chat box and share, what is a healthy home to you? When you hear the term healthy home, what does that mean to you? Oh, and thanks, Anna, for putting your phone number in the chat if folks need that. What is a healthy home? What does that mean to you? Clean air, clean and natural, happy and safe from hazards. Yeah, safe. Oh, lots of answers. Safe air, clean, comfortable, clean, sanitized. Appliances are all working. That'd be nice. Yes. Natural. Hi, Angie from Ohio. Quality, clean, non-toxic, lead-free, clean, drinkable water, no radon, absence of germs, safe. Oh, these are great reasons. And so much of that we're in control of, right? I see clean a lot, and I know I noticed dust on my dresser this morning. I need to be better at cleaning my home so that it is healthier. And minimizes unnecessary risks. Thanks for sharing that, Jeffrey, as well. I appreciate those comments, and we'll be looking at those and discussing several of those as we go through. So health and safety are oftentimes considered different and separate concepts in people's minds. And a lot of the healthy homes content has fallen under the notion of safety and home maintenance. But health really conjures up concepts related to nutrition, exercise, mental health. But there's really a space in there where those ideas all come together because of our environment, our home environment, home safety, and the environmental health of our home are really all connected. And so it's important for us to pay attention to the health of our home. As we were pulling together the slides, I found this quote and I really liked it. It says, safe, affordable housing is a basic necessity for every family. Without a decent place to live, people cannot be productive members of society. Children cannot learn and families cannot thrive. And so safe, affordable housing is one of those basic needs. I also found this quote from Florence Nightingale, who said the connection between health and dwelling is one of the most important that exists. And that's so very true for us. This diagram helps us look at how housing problems can cause a ripple effect of impacts. And so in this example here, we have water leaks at the very center as a housing problem. And then you'll see the dark gray or brown circles surrounding identifies some hazards. What happens? We get molds, the structure starts to collapse. There might be lead, there might be electrical hazards. And then there's health effects that result from that in the next circle. And the dark blue ones then identifies the cost to individuals. And then the bottom light gray ovals look at the cost to society, all from the ripple of a housing issue. And so we know that a simple issue, a simple concern can permeate all areas of our lives. So that was, I liked this graphic because it really helped us think about that. We will be looking at some of the key health risks in your home. You'll see the second bullet, the bottom bullet, it says today's focus is really on reducing indoor air quality related risks. That's where we're going to focus today. But we know that there are other key health risks in your home. The trips and falls that some people talked about in the chat, infectious diseases, foodborne illnesses, but we're going to focus today on the indoor air quality risks.
And just briefly, Sarah, wanted to say that often when we talk in our RentWise program about key health risks, we might be talking about the things like hoarding, for example, that might, accumulated things in the home might cause not only the trips and fall hazards, but it might also cause some of those other issues that we're going to be talking about today related to how do you even know if there's moisture in the home if you can't get to, the carpeting surface to know if there's any leaks or things like that. So just want to say that they're all interconnected. And we just wanted to make that point as well to say we're focusing on one aspect of it today.
Definitely. Thank you, Lori. So we wanted to share these principles of a healthy home provided by HUD. So keeping it dry, right? Preventing water from entering the home from a variety of places. The second one should be keeping it clean. So controlling the source of dust and contaminants. The third one, keep it safe, storing poisons out of reach, securing those loose rugs and children's play areas from hard or sharp surfaces or rugs to slip on, installing smoke and carbon monoxide detectors. Have fire extinguishers. Keeping it well ventilated is number 4 there. So making sure we've got fresh air. Number 5, keeping it pest free. Enough said, I think, on that one. 6 is keeping it contaminant free. So, looking at lead and radon and some of those dangerous things. Number 7 is keeping it well maintained. So inspecting, cleaning, and repairing. We know that takes time and energy and oftentimes money to do, but very important as we keep our homes clean. And then number 8, keeping it comfortable and efficient or thermally controlled, so that temperatures are appropriate, so that our home can be kept healthy. So we'll be circling back to this list at the end again, but this breaks it down into some very simple steps and tips that we can think about as we're trying to keep our homes. Now, I'm going to pass it on to Pat, who's going to take us through the next several slides.
Great introduction, Sarah. Thanks. Yeah, so I want folks to look at this series of numbers here that's attributed to Dr. Richard Corsi. 79, 69, 54, 26, 6, and 4. Do they ring any bells? Does that little puzzle make any sense? Well, interestingly enough, those are years. 79 is the average life expectancy in years. 69 of those years will be spent indoors. We'll only spend 6 of them outdoors and 4 of them in our vehicles or transportation. That leaves 54 indoors, meaning that, for 15 of them, you were in your office or out and about shopping or whatever. And of the 54 that you are in your home, 26 are spent in your bedroom, basically breathing your pillow. So I just wanted to use that as kind of a big context for indoor air quality and the awareness of how important the air that we breathe indoors is and where we are. One of the comments earlier was keep it well ventilated. Well, how many of us think about our ventilation relative to our bedroom? And that's where we're spending a lot of time, of course. It wasn't many years ago, people slept with their window slightly cracked, right? And there was a little bit of insight in that. Today, that's not particularly comfortable or efficient, but we do have to make sure we ventilate our house properly, including our bedroom. So the big picture here, you see the list that Sarah presented earlier, dry, pest-free, just slightly different order. But on the right is the main point of this slide, is that these things are interconnected. The building structure, the building enclosure, the thing we build to separate us from the great outdoors, the people that are inside and what we do and the actions that we take, and ultimately we can end up with these indoor hazards, if you will, that we need to be particularly tuned into. And that's really the point of today's conversation, is we're going to select several of those hazards and kind of focus on them. So I want to take a big picture view, kind of just start out at the very high level here. And if I were driving up to your home or a home and trying to size up what's the potential indoor air quality risk in this home, there's a number of things I want to look at first. I'm going to focus on combustion equipment, furnaces, boilers, any space heaters, fireplaces or wood stoves. Anything that has combustion related to it in the home, quite frankly, it could also be in the garage, by the way. That's our next one, is what's there in that attached garage and where is it located relative to the house? Most of you probably are not familiar with my work, but one of my kind of pet peeves are tuck under garages, where we put the building, the garage and everything that we don't want in our house right underneath of us. And then due to natural forces we call stack effect, those gases are brought up into the home. So it's not to say it's bad, it's just to say it's particularly troublesome. And when we start our car, we don't start our car and let it run in the garage, even with the garage door open. You back it out immediately, leave the garage open for a little bit, just to air, while maybe it's warming up, at the end of the driveway. And also be very, very careful you aren't running engines, or especially something like a generator in an emergency situation in our garage. The next one I'd be checking out is the basement or crawl space, how our house connects to the ground. And this becomes a very common source of moisture, radon, and other soil gases. Following that, do a little closer inspection of kitchen cooking. We have found out that cooking, well, it's a very vital, important part of our health, can produce a lot of pollutants, gaseous and particulates. We'll talk in more detail later. That can be harmful, and we want to make sure that they're safely evacuated from the kitchen, if you will, with a good range hood. Excessive humidity. So, you may be either experiencing it directly now, or you're looking for evidence that there's been excessive humidity. We don't want to add excess humidity by venting our dryer indoors. Not only is that adding humidity into the environment, it's adding a lot of other fine particulates and perhaps even chemicals. So we don't want to do that. Even line drying, things like that, where we're just simply adding too much moisture to the environment. Not having adequate kitchen and bath ventilation, so that we're quickly evacuating that excess moisture out of the home. And on occasion, wood stoves and fireplaces have their own challenges and issues, but if people start storing that firewood indoors, that can add a lot of moisture as it's drying out, along with other hazards. And last, be careful about hobbies, or their hobbies, things that you enjoy doing. Can't do them outside in the winter, and you pull them indoors, and where you're using chemicals or producing fine particulates that might be hazardous. So that's kind of the big picture. I'm going to zero in on a number of these, and then Lori and Sarah will follow with some others. But the first thing we want to do is make sure we have safe combustion and safe venting of those combustion byproducts up the chimney. It's always our number one top priority. It's probably not the number one health hazard or risk, actually. We'll see what that is later. But because it can really cause serious illness or even death, as we know through carbon monoxide poisoning, this is really, really a top priority. There's really three ways that our combustion appliances, let's think of our furnace, a boiler, how they vent their combustion byproducts to the atmosphere. Most of us will have a chimney or a flue that runs up through the house or alongside the outside of the home, up above the roof. And that's a chimney vented appliance. It means that you're bringing in gas. It could be, natural gas, propane, fuel oil, and you're burning that, and it's using basically house air, combusting that, and those byproducts are going into that chimney, and then the warm air in the chimney is lifting itself up and out of the building. See that there's a note here on the audio. I think I can do this quickly. Are others experiencing this fade in and out? I've had this with this headphone set before.
Yes, I'm hearing
yeah.
that as well, Pat.
Yeah,
All right,
I'm hearing
we're going to go to the other audio. I'm going to.
Thank you for Jeffrey for bringing that to our attention.
All right, now I'm on my computer speaker. Is that better? All right, good. Thank you for that. All right, so these are chimney vented equipment, and we rely on what's called natural draft, or the heat of the chimney, to exhaust those products up and out. And they're quite fragile, as you'll see in a minute. This is something we need to pay a lot of attention to. If you have newer equipment, a newer furnace, a newer boiler, you may have what's called power vented. It actually has a fan in there that ensures those combustion products are exhausted out of the building. To generally a very low risk there. And then very modern equipment, and the most desired equipment for certainly new construction or replacement in a home, is called sealed combustion. There's simply two pipes. It brings outside air in, goes through the combustion process, and vents the combustion byproducts directly out of the home, generally horizontally, no longer needing this chimney. The power vented may be either vertical or horizontal. Again, we want to reduce our risk by moving towards those power vented or sealed combustion appliances. If you have a natural chimney, doesn't mean it's failing. It just means you have to pay special attention to how it's working and making sure it's working properly. So these chimney vented devices can backdraft. It may be due to a poor chimney venting configuration. Could be a small blockage of some type. Or what more frequently happens is there's something indoors that's creating a negative pressure. We're exhausting a lot of air out of the house, creates a negative pressure. You know, air's lazy, if you will. It finds the easiest hole to come in back into your home and replace the air that you removed. And that might be your chimney, that nice big smooth pipe or vent. And that'll come down, impacting the ability of those combustion products to get out of the house. So we need to do things to try to minimize that negative pressure. I might add that, you know, things like a water heater that have low energy, low heat output have less draft and less stability to work against this negative pressure. So we're always worried about that water heater. And especially in the summer when it's kind of sitting there working on its own, if you will, doesn't have the benefit of the extra heat from a furnace or boiler. We want to seal the returns. You have forced air system, the returns in the basement or in near the heating device or water heating device can draw air, suck air out of that area, causing some negative pressure, wanting to bring the gases back down the chimney rather than up. When we use large exhaust devices, and this depends a lot on the tightness of the house, but as the houses get tighter, this becomes more and more important as you seal it up for winter, etc. You might need to crack a window when you're using the clothes dryer or the vented range hood so that there's adequate outside air and the ability for that air to come in without causing a negative pressure and backdrafting your furnace or boiler or water heater. And of course, the big concern there is carbon monoxide. One of the gases, there are lots of gases in there that really aren't healthy for us, but one of the ones that we're mainly concerned about because of the potential for death, serious illness or death, is carbon monoxide. So have your unit tuned up annually or every 2 years. Make sure that it's operating at peak efficiency. Not only is that going to help you identify if there's a problem, but make sure your unit's working as efficient and using as little gas as possible to keep your house and hot water warm. If they're really good, they'll be able to conduct a draft test to see how well it's drafting out of the home, even against negative pressure that might be in the house. The working carbon monoxide alarm's your backup, your safety. It's not a fix, but it tells you if there is a problem. There should be at least one alarm on each level. You want one within 10 foot of each bedroom, and it's not a bad idea to have one in the general vicinity, not sitting directly next to, but in the general vicinity of the combustion appliance that you might be concerned about. So I want to move into a different risk, and that's respirable particulate matter, PM. And basically these are particles, solids, that are floating around in the air. You know, for sunlight, you know, sometimes you see the dust floating through the air. You'll later find out that's not the problem. It's the stuff you can't see. Typically classified by size or microns. So PM10 is 10 micron particles, PM5, 2.5, PM1 is 1 micron. And basically these things can cause upper respiratory irritation and trouble. They can get down into the lungs, especially those PM1, 2.5, the really fine particles can get much deeper into our respiratory system. Can trigger allergies, asthma, lung disease, cancer, and some of these fine particles actually can move into the bloodstream and affect our circulatory system, heart, etc. So the larger particles, the 5 to 10 microns, these particles typically don't go very deep into the lung. So they're more nasal and throat irritants. You know, when we blow our nose or clear our throat, sometimes we're going to expel those things and get them out of our system. But they still can be triggers for allergies and asthma. And where do they come from? Outdoor air, pollen, mold spores, inorganic dust. Um, and I noticed a comment on in the chat, having things that are natural. Well, there's some natural things that are not so healthy for us either, like pollen and mold spores for those that are allergic to those things. We'll find radon's also natural, by the way. So natural isn't always safe, but I get the point. We want to avoid some of these man-made products. Pet dander is a big source of particles, and pet dander and the saliva as it dries, and that can be troublesome for many people. And last are dust mites, and basically these are everywhere. They grow where there's high humidity in a food source. Typically that's skin scale. So like in your bed, on your pillow, that's why we launder those things. In your favorite chair, in the carpet next to your chair. So that's why we want to control the indoor humidity. They don't do well in very dry environments. But many people are allergic to the parts and pieces in the fecal matter from dust mites. The big particles are pretty easy, just a good filter. And if you have forced air system, getting a good filter in that system will take care of those large particles. I was just telling my students yesterday, almost all filters that we think of, typical filters in our home furnace, are for the equipment. They're not for your health. They're not for your lungs. They're to keep the equipment clean. And so to get healthy air for our lungs, we have to do a better job, put in a different kind of filtration. Also, just cleaning practices. Carpets are an excellent storage medium for particles as they land and fall, and then as we walk across, we kick them back up again. So good deep cleaning with a good vacuum, with a good suction, so you don't just scatter them in the air, is very, very important. We also encourage people to use smooth source flooring, so it's easy to damp mop and to kind of take those particles and get them out of the house for good. The fine particulates. This is our #1 indoor air quality risk as determined by the scientists at Lawrence Berkeley National Laboratory and others. They've been studying a lot on what really is good for us or not good for us in our homes, in our indoor environments. And these very fine particles, 5 micron and less, go much deeper into the lung. And because we're exposed to so many of them, this kind of comes out as the top indoor air quality health risk. And again, because we're spending so much time in our home, that obviously applies to our house. And again, eyes, nose, throat irritation. Then the particles going deep into our lung can certainly aggravate coronary and respiratory symptoms. Again, because some of these fine particles slide over from the lung into the bloodstream, again, they can get into the circulatory system and affect heart and, of course, lung disease. Where do these fine particles come from? One of the top sources is cooking. I'd mentioned this kind of as a teaser up front. When we cook, we generate moisture, of course. We generate gases of various sorts. That's the aromas you're smelling, and then other gases that you don't, and very fine particulates. And so it's really important to exhaust all of that, moisture, gases, and these particulates to the outdoor with a good range hood. Now remember earlier, the range hood has a backside because it's sucking a lot of air out of your house. We have to be paying attention to the combustion venting. And if you have a hood that's not so good, typically the front burners, it all comes into the kitchen. So if for nothing else, use your back burners when you're using your range hood. Obvious tobacco smoke, incense, candles, all those things produce incredibly fine particulates. That's what you see when, you used to be in the bar and you could haze. That's fine particles that are going deep into your lung. And outdoor air can also be a source. So if a lot of people like natural ventilation, open the windows, let all that in. Again, you could be bringing in pollen and mold spores, and you can be bringing in very fine dust that gets deposited in the carpet again, and later could be kicked up. So just be careful, manage your windows when there might be high wind conditions, we might have a wildfire, something like that, to mitigate the particles that we're bringing in from the outdoors. Let's see here. Yeah. So what's the solution to this? It's really filtration again. So if we have a forced air furnace, and if it's a good enough system that it can handle a better filter, a high efficiency filter, similar to the one that I showed earlier, a MERV 10 or better filter would be really, really good. That's going to catch the finer particles much better. MERV stands for minimum efficiency rating value. It's an odd acronym, but it's just a reflection of the quality of the filter in terms of picking up particles and fine particles in particular. But some of these filters can be too restrictive and cause your furnace fan to have to overwork or cause some challenges for your heating and cooling system to do its job. So be careful there, get a professional. But if you have room to put in a very large or thick, what we call a deep pleated media filter, you'll be able to get really good filtration out of your forced air system. And really that's what all homes should have today, but what most don't. And if you can't do that, then use standalone filtration. And here's a a homemade, it's actually a very effective air filter. It's 4 MERV 11 or 12 or 13 furnace filters. These are 2-inch filters. You can also get 4-inch version. They're taped together with a cardboard blank on the bottom, and you take a really nice quality box fan, window fan, put it on top, tape that together. You do a little mask, what we call around or shroud around the corners where we see turbulence in the fan. Turn that on, and you're going to get very high volume of outstanding filtration for that space, for that room. Thousands and thousands of these have been built, put into schools and things like that during COVID, because if you use a MERV 13 filter, it'll actually filter out the COVID virus or coronavirus. Be careful with your standalone filtration. A lot of people go online. Now, this one that I'm showing you here costs probably $80 plus maybe an hour of your time. But you can go online and you can spend $300, $400, $500, $600 on these things, and in some cases they're actually dangerous. They produce ozone, they ionize the air. Some of them have UV, which is not dangerous in and of itself, but it's not particularly useful in this application. So you don't have to spend a lot of money for all those extra bells and windows, just bells and whistles. Just get a good filter. And now I'm going to turn it over to my colleague, Lori.
Okay, thanks, Pat. I always love seeing that dental or that filtration system. I think that's just so ingenious. So love to look at that. All right. So next we're talking about mold and moisture. And first of all, what is mold? Well, of course, it's a type of fungus. It's made up of very small organisms that can be found just about anywhere in our environment. I go outside right now, and when we're talking about allergies to some of these things, the snow mold is just terrible for me these days as we're starting to see grass again. But mold needs water in order to grow. And so we want to keep our homes dry in order to contain mold. And if we're looking at understanding mold, we know that, as I just pointed out, you can't have mold without moisture. And the other thing it needs is a food source. It needs to have organic matter. Now, that might include wood, wallpaper, soil, plants, fabric. Those are all, surfaces that this mold may be growing on. And so even a small amount of water can feed a colony of mold with the right conditions. So the right type of medium, as a food source, and the moisture as well. And so you see that excessive surface moisture can happen due to lack of energy. So those cold surfaces may be the place, the cold window or the corners of a home, behind furniture or on an outside wall. And as I mentioned, if you're not able to see the spaces due to other factors in the home, you might not even recognize that this is happening. On a cold basement wall or a crawl space wall, under the carpet on a cold slab, inside a cold wall or an attic might be appropriate surfaces for mold to be growing. So as we look at fixes for surface moisture problems, we look at reducing the relative humidity. So mold won't grow if there is not moisture present. So whether it's actual water or humid environment, you need to reduce that humidity or moisture. And then you can reduce that type of environment in which the mold will grow. Warming the surface is one of the ways that you can do that. And for some areas that are often damp, like a shower, or in general, a bathroom, increasing ventilation and cleaning more frequently can help prevent mold from occurring. But you see some examples there of what you might do. Turn off humidifiers. A lot of us have humidifiers in our home in the winter because, otherwise we'd go around shocking everyone in our homes. It's an awful dry environment in the winter. So we have to take a look at what the humidity in our home actually is. You see improving that bathroom and kitchen ventilation, as was discussed, venting that clothes dryer out to an outside area. Managing soil moisture might be another thing. And again, then we talk about warming up that surface. One of those is not putting carpet on a cold concrete slab. That wall and attic insulation might be part of it as well. And installing storm windows. So those may all be ways that we can deal with fixes for moisture problems. So why should you be concerned? We know that those that the molds produce spores. Those are those tiny specks that you can't even see, but they float through the air. And when you're breathing in those mold spores, they can get into your lungs and can cause health problems. And so, people with allergies, I mentioned I have allergies to molds. You can have quite a reaction. And those include watery eyes, runny and stuffed noses, sneezing, itching, wheezing. You might have trouble breathing. You might have headaches or tiredness, and it can also be a trigger for those that have asthma conditions. And so we want to be aware of those. And very often we don't necessarily know of those allergies. It's important to get those checked out if you're having some of those symptoms to understand what is going on. And so what should you look for in your home? Most of us have seen mold or moisture around our home. We may not have seen the mold, we may have seen the moisture, but again, it's alive. And so when it's growing on wet or damp surfaces, we need to be dealing with treating those wet or damp surfaces and figuring out the reason that is happening, and then drying those things out. Now, mold can be gray or it could be black. You might see white, orange, or green specks. It can grow out in the open, or again, it can be on the places like walls, clothes, appliances, and in those hidden spaces that we talked about behind walls, in attics, or under carpets. So again, those action steps to take, checking those downspouts and gutters, making sure that they are working properly and are going away from the home. Another piece of that is sloping the dirt from your house's foundation away from the home so it's not collecting. The idea of repairing leaks, whether it's roofs, walls, doors, windows. Again, keeping surfaces dry. If you see that there are wet areas in the home, what can you do to remedy those? Checking the humidity in a home, and I'll refer back to Pat for more information on hygrometers and relative humidity and such. You can probably give us a little bit more detail on that. But cut down on steam and run fans, whether it's in the home, in the kitchen, when you are cooking, or also in a bath area, to run those fans to make sure that you are getting proper ventilation there. Another piece is throwing items away that have been very wet. Sometimes we don't want to throw things away and we think, oh, well, I can save it and I can correct that. If they've been very wet for more than a few days, probably best just to get rid of it. And cleaning mold with chlorine bleach, soap, and water. And again, that venting the dryer outside. Pat, do you want to share some information about the humidity as well?
Sure. Hopefully the audio will work a little better here. Yeah, it's just maintaining a kind of an awareness of condensate moisture in the air, indoor air. The typical rule of thumb is the colder it gets outside, the lower the humidity should be. Again, nobody likes the super dry air on your nose or, sparks and static electricity and those things. But when it's very, very cold outside, and one indicator of this will be window condensation. If you're seeing some condensation, it's showing you that the humidity is simply a little too high for your home. And that maybe it's not too high for your lungs, but it's causing some condensation on surfaces that you see, like the window or a corner, an edge, or behind a dresser. And there's other places you can't see where it's probably also condensing and potentially going to grow mold. So in the middle of the winter, most houses should probably be in that 20-25% RH range. That's a little dry for most people. Middle of the winter, 30 is going to be fine, 30-35. And as we get towards, the shoulder season, spring and fall, 40% is probably safe. So those are just some guidelines to try to watch that indoor humidity, get a good gauge or two, and kind of keep track of how things are going. But the spot ventilation really is useful, kitchen and bathroom, and making sure you have a dry basement or a crawl space really helps to manage the main sources that contribute to that humidity.
So one of the questions, okay, Sarah was going to
Go for it, Lori.
All right. One of the questions we have is what should you do instead of a rug or carpet on concrete in the basement? And I would say a rug is okay as if it can be moved or, removed should it be wet. Carpet is a different story because that's usually an installed piece. And so that is not something that is removed as easily. Pat, what else?
Yeah, I responded to that chat and then I realized I responded to Anna. So we were talking about the audio issues. I just posted it. But yes, so concrete's cold, right? One of the things we say in kind of the moisture world is cooling is wetting, or colder is wetter, warming is drying, or warmer is drier. And so when you have cool surfaces, like you showed us there, Lori, those cold surfaces are potential for condensation. Concrete's cold. People don't like cold. They put carpet on it. Unfortunately, that makes the concrete colder. Your foot warmer, but the concrete colder. And a colder surface is going to more prone to condensation happening. So also there's a lot of fine dust and food source for dust mites under that carpet, in addition to the mold problem. So carpeting on concrete is just, in my book, a no-no. I know why we all do it, but very few concrete slabs have been produced in such a way that they're going to be dry enough and warm enough. I mean, if we insulate under them, of course, we can change this, but you can't do that in an existing home. Very few concrete floors are dry enough and warm enough to throw down, kind of wall-to-wall type carpeting. So I encourage people to look at keeping the concrete, finishing it with a concrete finish of some type. Those are not for do-it-yourselfers. A stain, basically a concrete stain, or you move to a tile, a permeable tile, not a vinyl tile, because that's going to trap moisture and you're going to have stuff happening at the adhesive level of the tile. So you want a permeable tile, and or then use spot rugs that can be removed and cleaned if there were a problem.
Okay.
Windows in the winter just tell you your indoor humidity is too high for that window. Now again, that may not be the best indicator of what the actual humidity is. It may be a very cold window, a single pane window or something. But if you have standard kind of double pane windows and there's condensation on that, probably is an indicator you're going to need to bring down the humidity. But also on that list of things that Lori presented, one of the things is to put on a storm window. That warms up the window, which will then allow you to carry a little more humidity before you see before condensation occurs. Now again, that doesn't mean it's safe for other parts of the house, but it's one way to try to, certainly to reduce the window condensation and allow your home to carry a little more humidity, if the rest of it's, in fact, okay with that.
Okay, thanks, Pat. We're back to you for VOCs.
All right, got to do a little rearranging here. All right, so one of the things people talk about is volatile organic compounds. Basically, these are compounds that are in building materials, our home personal care products, some of the activities that we do, where a solid is volatilizing and turning into a gas and emission. We have the emissions or the release or the off-gassing from that solid into a gas that can move around in our home environment and into our lungs. Some of them are quite benign, others are potentially carcinogenic. So this is a wide category of pollutants that can be in our home. So we're just going to kind of hit it at a very high level. One of the volatile organic compounds that we do talk about a fair bit is formaldehyde. Formaldehyde actually is something that's fairly easy to test for. And certainly if you have if it's new construction, a lot of new building materials, a lot of new even furniture that's being brought into the home or finishing, paints and varnishes and stains and things like that can have remarkable high levels of volatile organic compounds. Let's be careful with the activities, the hobbies there is again cooking, dry cleaning has some volatile organic compounds in it that when you bring it into the house, some people suggest airing it out a bit before you bring it in the home. A little hard to do in our environment. Something as simple as an air freshener. You think, oh, this is a good thing. They're actually, what they're doing is emitting some volatile organic compounds that are overpowering basically the thing that you found, the odor you found offensive, and they might not be very healthy for you at all. So be careful. Somebody mentioned the cleaning products. We can't go into all the detail there, but just look for cleaning products that have less chemicals generally, and yet still get the surfaces disinfectant or the dishes clean or the clothes sanitized. On building products, generally you're trying to avoid things that have high levels of urea formaldehyde. There's a second formaldehyde called phenylformaldehyde that's made for like outdoor plywood, outdoor composite products. That off gas is much less than things that have been designed for indoor use where they don't anticipate a moisture concern, but they off gas far more urea formaldehyde gas into the air. Let's see here, I gotta find my button. There. All right. They can have some pretty significant acute and short-term exposure and symptoms, eyes, nose, throat irritation. I can walk into a fabric store and my eyes start to well up, my nose starts to run. Same thing if I'm walking by a perfume counter. There's certain volatile organic compounds that can be very irritants for our eyes, nose, and throat. Can lead to headaches, nausea, vomiting, dizziness. Some people will have asthmatic response to some of these. Chronic exposure, like I said, some of these are carcinogens. Formaldehyde is a known carcinogen. Typically, we try to keep it very small. Like, I want to kind of go back to a point we talk about healthy home, and everyone's talking about clean and natural and germ-free. Well, nothing's going to be perfectly clean and germ-free. What we're trying to do is minimize risk here. So it's a risk game. We're trying to reduce our risk. And again, because some of these, like I said, can be carcinogens, we want to be worried about cancer, liver, kidney damage, or even central nervous system damage from some of these VOCs. I mean, I'll use an example, benzene. Most of us probably have heard of that, very high end. There's others. But that should not be in our house to begin with. It might be in our garage, and that's another good reason to have separation between our garage and our house, and make sure those gases aren't being drawn in or sucked into our home. Volatile organic compounds, action steps, be careful what you buy. I'm going to kind of rush through this a little bit due to time. Dispose properly of unused chemicals, get them out of the house, certainly store them in the garage or somewhere else in an outbuilding perhaps. Some of them they don't want to freeze, so it's always a challenge where we're going to store this, things like paints and unused cleaners, etc. Increase our ventilation, keep the temperature and relative humidity low. When we're doing home innovations, be very cognizant of what we're bringing into the home, be very attentive to ventilation during that. And you may actually want to increase the ventilation rate for several days or weeks or months following some of this, just to make sure that the off-gassing typically is much higher at the beginning and then tails off, so that early on we want to get rid of that off-gassing as quickly as possible. There's some good resources listed at the bottom here, of course, too. Radon's a radioactive gas. You can't see it, can't smell it, can't taste it, and it's coming from the soil. It's natural. It's coming through radioactive decay from the soil. Comes into our home, and as a gas, it's actually a solid in the soil, uranium and other decay progeny. But the decay particles go to a gaseous state. Radon gas is transportable, gets into our home. It then further decays into solids that are in the air, and we breathe them in. They get stuck in our lung and can cause lung cancer. So it's a very large, second leading cause of lung cancer in the U.S. Oops, did I? Yeah, sorry. Basically, this is an easy one to test for. Get a home test kit. So several people said, well, I've been home during the COVID for 2 years in my basement office. Good idea to test. We should always test the lowest living level. So if you're spending time down there, any significant amount of time at all, that's where your test should be done. Doing some at the higher level might be useful as well. And basically, you're trying to get your annual risk. Short-term tests are very good because they're quick, but they only give you a snapshot. So you always want to put a short term and a long term. If the short term comes back reasonable, okay, you can wait for the long term. Short term comes back very high, you want to move a little quicker. You don't want to wait until the long term test unit is completed. Do not smoke in the house. That adds particles that add to this opportunity for these particles to get stuck to the smoke particles and get deep in your lung. Seal your basement floor, cracks. Cover, if you have a crawl space, it's got to be covered with a ground cloth that's sealed at the edges. And there's great resources on radon. This is one of the pollutants where we have a lot of, like I said, it's easy to test. We have a lot of resources, and it's relatively easy, not real cheap sometimes, but relatively easy to manage and get rid of, or bring the levels down to a low risk level in your home. I think it's called an active subslab depressurization system. If you think you have an issue or a problem, that generally is going to be your best fix, and they're very effective, but may cost $1,000, $2,000, $3,000 depending on what it takes to get your house safely, get one installed safely in your home. All right, and back to
I'm going to jump in now. Thanks, Pat. And I'm realizing we really should have made this webinar probably 90 minutes instead of 60 minutes because we've got such great information and there's been good discussion. And Lori is sharing, you will receive a copy of the slides after the webinar. And then at the end of this series, so probably mid-May, we're going to be sending out another email with a playlist for all the webinars in this series. So you will get a link to the recording as well. So we're going to cover just a few more here before we have to wrap up, and I think we might go over just a little bit. So if you're able to hang in there, great. Otherwise, you will get the slides too. So asbestos. It's a mineral fiber that occurs in rocks and soil, and it's got some really great attributes. It has great fiber strength and it's heat resistance, and so it's been used in building construction materials for insulation and as a fire retardant, and so had been used very widely. And so you can see the attic and wall insulation, floor tiles, roofing and siding shingles, textured paint, insulation on furnaces, heat resistant fabrics, even automobile clutches and brakes. So asbestos has been used in a wide variety of places. We're going to go to the next slide here. So exposure occurs when that asbestos containing material is disturbed or damaged, because then those particles are released and those fibers go into the air, and that makes it more challenging, because those are the times when we really need to be concerned. You can see the health effects listed there: lung cancer, mesothelioma, I'm sure I'm not pronouncing that correctly, but a rare form of cancer, asbestosis, which is a serious progressive long-term non-cancer disease of the lungs. So a lot of impact on the lungs with asbestos. So we have a list of do's and don'ts related to asbestos. So do leave undamaged asbestos containing materials alone. Don't mess with them. They recommend not not having much activity in the area where asbestos is, or especially where asbestos has been disturbed. Take every precaution to avoid damaging asbestos containing material. So don't be messing around with different products that has asbestos on it. And then if you do have to have removal or repairs done, bring in professionals, because those folks are trained in how to do that safely and to minimize exposure. Don't sweep, dust, or vacuum that debris. Pat had referenced earlier in cleaning, wet mopping, perhaps as an alternative to do that. But again, don't be messing with asbestos material, sawing, sanding, scraping. Don't use abrasive pads or brushes or power strippers to take wax off asbestos flooring. If you have if you need to level asbestos flooring, take care with that, and they really suggest not sanding or leveling that when it needs. And if you have flooring that needs to be replaced that has asbestos, they typically recommend putting new flooring over it rather than removing the flooring with asbestos. They talk again too about not tracking that material around the house, so walking through it, that kind of thing. So cleaning with a wet mop. So that's quickly some do's and don'ts with asbestos. Lead, we wanted to mention that, and I think we hear a lot about lead in homes and the impact on children. So we can find lead in our home through paint, water pipes, gasoline, pottery, and definitely a lot of consequences for young children and pregnant women. And so there can be problems with learning, growth, and behaviors that can really last a lifetime. So we need to really pay attention to the potential of lead and the impact on those that live in the home. So some good questions here. Do you live in an older home? Many older homes have lead-based paint or lead water pipes. Lead paint was banned, I think, back in 1978, and homes that were built before 1950 are most likely to have lead paint and lead water pipes. Is there cracking, chipping, flaking paint? Are there places where the paint is being rubbed? Do you have water pipes made with lead? Have you recently remodeled or renovated? Is there lead in the soil by your home? Does someone you live with work where lead is used? So they'd be bringing that into the home after their shift. Do you have children under age 6 who have not been tested for a blood test for lead? I think that's pretty standard these days, but we want to make sure that we do have our children tested. Or have neighbor children or playmates ever had high blood lead tests? So you want to know that, because if your children are over playing at their home, or maybe it's in your yard or in your outdoor environment as well. So what can we do? Having our kids tested for lead is very important. Find out if your home has lead by checking that. You may need to have your home or water tested. Typically your local or state health department can tell you how to do this for little or no cost. And many hardware stores also sell low-cost lead testing kits. So good to do that. And then protect your children from lead. Washing their hands and face with soap and water before they eat, washing toys, keep down lead-based paint dust with housekeeping, wiping windowsills and floors and other surfaces with paper towels and warm water. So again, using a wet dust mop, again, when we're trying to clean things up is really good. And of course, encouraging kids not to put things in their mouth as well, or not to chew on the windowsill or those types of things. We're going to go to the next slide here. All right, so that was lead in a super quick quick way. We're going to jump over to drinking water. So what might be unsafe in our drinking water? We have a list of things here that we might be concerned about. So some questions to ask when we're thinking about drinking water. Where does our water come from? Is it a public water supply or is it a well? And so the concerns will really depend upon where our water comes from. Typically, public water supplies are tested for a lot of different chemicals, and if there's a problem, the utility has to treat that water to make it safe, or they're supposed to inform us if there are issues. And so they should be providing those results from the water tests with us, mailing those or printing them in the local newspaper. So if you have public water, it could become unsafe after it gets into our home if it has to travel through lead or copper pipes. And so we need to know what kind of pipes do we have. If you have lead pipes, especially if your home is older, they may have been joined with lead solder. And so lead pipes are typically a dull gray in color, and they typically scratch easily with a key. Copper pipes are reddish in color. So knowing what kind of pipes you have in your home. So there are some things we can do with the drinking water. So if you do have lead pipes, it's good to clear the pipes when you're getting water. So let the water run for a few minutes if not used recently. And I had to really kind of chuckle with this one because I remember my mom saying, well, don't be wasting water, right? And my thought was I wanted to get a cold cup of water. I wasn't thinking about some of the toxins that might be in it, but letting it run for a few minutes. They also suggest if you have lead pipes to never use hot water from the tap for cooking or drinking or making baby formula, because the warm water might pick up more toxins than the colder water. So clearing the pipes when we're using it also help protect the water, our water supply. So what can we do if we are using poisons for bugs or weeds? Be sure to follow those instructions and do that safely. Store those chemicals safely. Do not throw chemicals in the garbage or down the drain. Check with your local county. They typically have some collection days where they'll take old chemicals. And again, cleaning up after your dogs. I was not surprised to see this, but it was on the list, right? So leaving pet waste on the ground where rainwater can wash the germs into rivers and lakes is not a good deal. So disposing of those properly. And if you have a private water supply, get your well water tested and protect your water supply. So taking care of it, especially if it's old. Do you know where your well is? Find your well. Is it uphill from animal pens, manure, or waste management, septic systems, dumps, or places where chemicals are stored? So figure out where your well is in relation to the rest of the things on your property. We wanted to provide this link for a healthy homes checklist. And yes, it is way too small for you to read on the screen, but you will be getting a copy of these slides, and we will be putting this link along with some others in the email. So this would be a nice checklist so you can walk around and check out things in your home. And Lori, this was supposed to be your slide, so I'm going to pass it on to you now.
That's okay. Yeah, and we have this on our list of resources, and Anna will be sharing those briefly here too. So so we've got the Healthy Homes checklist for one. Just wanted to basically refer back to those principles of a healthy home. And so you can see those again. Again, these are part of one of the resources that you will be receiving too, as they're going to be coming up shortly. Also wanted to mention that energy assistance and weatherization are resources to be aware of. Typically, those are run through your community action programs. And so make sure that, if you think you might be eligible for those, you can always check out the qualifications. And I understand, Pat, and as we were preparing some of the information for today, that some of those programs may be somewhat expanded as well. And so we may not have thought that we'd fall into a category that would be eligible, but perhaps things have changed. And this is a list of resources. You'll be getting some resources as well as we close things out today. We do want to just spend a little bit of time. I think we have 4 questions just to check your knowledge. If Anna can bring that the poll up for us. We've got all of her work at the tail end here for her to do it all at one time. So we'll give her just a minute here. Here we go. Check your knowledge. We have 4 questions for you. So first of all, which of the following can be an indoor air quality concern? Furnaces, boilers, space heaters, attached garages and generators, basement moisture, and soil gases, or all of the above? Let you just go through. I think they're all coming up at one time, actually. Okay, so.
Yep, I think folks will scroll down using the bar on the right-hand side.
So our second one being asbestos is a mineral fiber that occurs in rocks and soil. True or false? And number 3, which of the following are concerns related to lead poisoning in children? We made these very easy for you. And number 4, then, volatile organic compounds, VOCs, can be given off from which items? Give it just a tad bit more time. And thanks everyone for hanging with us as we're a little bit over time here. So appreciate it.
I did want to comment, I added it into the chat, but missed a very important one on the radon. So if you have open cracks or an open sump in particular, for homes that have sump pumps or a sump pit, that is an excellent way of collecting radon out of the soil around your home and bringing it directly into your house. Those must be sealed so that you aren't allowing for that easy entry of radon and other soil gases. And you can passively vent that sump lid after it's sealed. You can put a pipe into that has a flex connector, so it could be removed for maintenance. But you could vent that up through the house and to the roof to safely allow those gases to go up into the environment. Doesn't mean they all will naturally. You might still have negative pressure in the house that overpowers that and draws some of that moisture and radon from other cracks in the foundation, if you will. But it's a very important step to mitigating and reducing the radon entry into the home. And that system could be I said activated means basically a fan is installed on that to even put a greater negative pressure under the home to collect and evacuate those radon gases from under your home so they don't come into the house. But that I prefer a professional to come in and do that because there's some steps that need to be done on testing and proper installation and monitoring.
We just have one more question for you all. If you think about an action that you will take as a result of this webinar, could you please share that in the chat? And as you are doing that, I will just quickly run through. If you need to get a certificate of participation for this webinar, you can complete the evaluation and you will be able to request a certificate of participation at that time. Our evaluation, and I believe that Anna has probably provided this already, but maybe can do it another time. You will be able to complete the evaluation, and then, as Sarah indicated, watch for a follow-up email that will have the playlist of all of the webinars as well. So you'll be able to see everything in this series of No Place Like Home as well. And briefly, we have a few more webinars that are still coming up. We have a series in Spanish that you may be interested in following along with. And we have our family friendly.
Can you go back to what the link was for the,
I
I didn't
certainly-
have it, No Place email. Okay, I'm good.
Perfect.
Thank you.
All right. So our Spanish language webinars, a few left there. Our family-friendly Earth Care series, you see a few there, and Finding Balance as well. Making Sense of It All is really kicking off very shortly in another week. And there's our No Place Like Home. We still have a couple of webinars left there, recovery and health. And you can search all of our webinars. I believe that was in the links as well that you see in the chat. And we ask you to engage with us. You can check us out on Facebook, Instagram, Pinterest, Twitter, LinkedIn, YouTube, and join our family our e-newsletter, and we welcome you to do that as well. If you have any other questions and would like to just share them in the chat, please do, and we'll try to get back to answering all of those. And so thank you once again, everyone, for joining today. And again, let us know if you have other questions. Thanks for joining.
I think it's important not to let this overwhelm you. Just pick one or two or three things and get started. All these things can be managed with time. It's just, don't kind of just out of mind, out of sight, out of mind. Be aware of what's going on in your home and take steps that you can to try to make it healthier.
That's such good advice, Pat. Just do one thing. Pick something to start with today. Yes.
We like that mantra, don't we, Sarah? Do one thing.
Do what you can today.
Yep.
Great. Anna, I think we can stop the recording and we'll hang out here for a few minutes if folks have questions.